Okay, tonight our topics are hydrogen for renewable energy and hydroelectric. Okay, both are renewable energy. So hydrogen power plant and hydroelectric power plant. Our reporters for tonight will be engineer Bethel Buliser and engineer Llanos. No, they will be reporting. Our first presenter is Engineer Buliser. She will be presenting the hydroelectric. So let's uh, listen well to her reporting. Whenever you're ready, Engineer Buliser, you may start your presentation.
So, good evening, everyone. So, good evening again. So, I am Engineer Bethel, and I will be reporting hydroelectric energy source. So, first, we will be having a video about hydropower.
Engineer Buliser, does this video have audio?
I will let you
Okay,
know.
wala lang may madungog. You may share audio na diri sa kaning tab, kaning more. Ay, sakto ba? I think na dira sa more.
Share sound. Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Types of hydroelectricity production, dams and run-of-river. Hydro dams utilize the potential energy from dammed water to produce electricity. A dam is a large barrier constructed to raise the level of water and control its flow. The elevation created by the dam creates gravitational force for turning the turbine when water is released. Some dams also contain an additional reservoir at their base where water is stored to be pumped to the higher reservoir for release when electricity is in demand. This is referred to as pumped storage hydro. The second form of hydroelectricity production is run-of-river hydro. Run-of-river still uses turbines and generators, but relies on natural water flow rates of rivers, diverting just a portion of the water through turbines. Because run-of-river hydro is subject to natural water variability, it is more intermittent than dammed hydro. There are various sizes of hydro plants that produce electricity. Large hydro, greater than 30 megawatts, small hydro, 100 kilowatts to 30 megawatts, and micro hydro, less than 100 kilowatts. The Hoover Dam in the United States is a whopping 2,074 megawatts, which is enough to serve 1.3 million people. Of all renewable energy sources, hydropower holds the largest share of worldwide electricity production. Hydropower has several benefits. It is a cost-competitive form of electricity, even though the initial building cost can be high. It is quite reliable compared to other renewable options and pairs well with other sources as it can be used as baseload power. In some cases, dammed reservoirs can also help with flood control and be a reliable water supply for communities. There are also some concerns with hydropower, especially when it comes to large dams. Damming a river has a major impact on the local environment, changing wildlife habitats, blocking fish passage, and often forcing people in riverside communities to move out of their homes. In addition, dam failures can be catastrophic, claiming the lives of those living downstream. Hydro plants are also not completely free of greenhouse gas emissions. As with most forms of energy, carbon dioxide emissions happen during construction, particularly due to the large quantities of cement used, and plant matter in the flooded areas makes methane, another greenhouse gas, as it decays underwater. That's hydropower.
So that is the overview about hydroelectric power. So how do we get energy from water? So hydropower or hydroelectric power, it is a renewable source of energy that generates power by using a dam or diversion structure to alter the natural flow of a river or body of water. So ang hydropower, rely siya sa endless, constant recharging system sa water cycle to produce electricity. So using a fuel, the fuel will be the water that is not reduced or eliminated in the process. So daghan klase no or types sa hydropower facilities, though they are all powered by the kinetic energy of the flowing water as it moves downstream. So ang hydropower, it utilizes turbines and generators to convert that kinetic energy into electricity, which is then, mo din na siya ang i-feed sa electric grid to power the homes, businesses, and industries. So next, I'll be showing to you the history of hydroelectric power.
Hydropower is a type of renewable energy. It has a long history. Since the early ages, water wheels have helped humans to do several works like irrigating crops and grinding grains. Also, it brought revolutionary improvement in the paper mills, textile mills, metallurgy plants. Later, the water wheels were replaced by the smaller, cheaper and more efficient water turbines. When the French engineer, Benoit Fourneyron, introduced the first model in 1827. This was the first design of a reaction turbine capable of generating 6 horsepower or 4.5 kilowatt with 2 sets of blades arched in opposite directions. Probably, the most important year in hydropower history was in 1831 when the first electric generator was invented by Michael Faraday. This laid the foundation for us. After Fourneyron, James Francis created the modern water turbine in 1849. It was called the Francis turbine, and it is the most widely used water turbine till today. The first impulse turbine was created in the 1870s by an American engineer named Lester Allen Pelton. It was named the Pelton wheel after it was patented in 1880. The world's first hydroelectric power plant was established in Appleton, Wisconsin, United States, along the Fox River in 1882. After that, over the next century, numerous hydroelectric projects developed all over the world. Currently, the total installed capacity globally is 1292 gigawatt, with China having the highest capacity, 353.3 gigawatts, followed by Brazil, 114 gigawatts. To learn more,
So that sums up the history of a hydroelectric power. So ang hydroelectric power, because it uses water to generate electricity, ang power plants are usually located dool gina siya sa water source. So the energy available from moving water depends on both sa volume, sa water flow, and sa change sa elevation, also known as the head. So we will tackle that in the components of hydroelectric power plants. From one point to another, so the greater ang flow sa water, o the higher ang head, the more electricity na iyahang ma-generate. So at the plant level, ang water, as what we can see in the GIF. So the water flows through a pipe, which is a penstock. And then, kani siya from intake, no? Diha ni sulod ang tubig. Then diha siya moagi sa penstock, which is then it is a kinetic energy that would drive our turbine, ratong turbine. Ang turbine din ang spin sa generator that ultimately produces electricity. So as what we've seen, no, turbine, then connected din siya sa generator, then transformer, and paingon sa transmission line. So, at the plant level, mo to siya ang way for us to for the HEPP or the hydroelectric power plant to generate that electricity. So most conventional hydroelectric facilities operate this way, including katong run of the river system and pump storage systems. So we have here the dam. So muna siya ang dam, no? Then kani siya ang intake dire. Tapos we have the penstock. Kani siya ang penstock or also known as a pipe. And kani siya ang turbina. So first the dam. So most hydropower plants rely dito sila sa dam that holds back water, creating a large reservoir. So ang intake is the gate on the dam open and the gravity pulls the water through the penstock. The next, the penstock is a conduit through which the water flows from a higher to a lower elevation. But in the pump storage pod, um, from the lower reservoir, ang water mubalik siya paingon sa higher reservoir. So we will tackle that later. Then the water builds up pressure as it flows through this pipe. The next, the turbine, the water strikes and turns the large blades of a turbine. So naa tay different types sa turbine, which is attached to a generator above it by way of a shaft. So the most common type of turbine for hydropower plants is the Francis turbine, which looks like a big disc with curved blades. So next, the generator. This is the generator. Dari na nag-produce og electricity, no? So as the turbine blade turns, so do a series of magnets inside the generator. So giant magnets rotate past copper coils, producing alternating current by moving electrons. Then next, we have here connected atong transformer. So the purpose of the transformer is to change the level of the voltage of an electricity. So the transformer inside the powerhouse takes the AC and converts it to higher voltage current. So ipa-higher niya. The next transformer is the power lines, kanisha. So out of every power plant come 4 wires. So the 3 phases of power being produced simultaneously, plus we have the neutral or the ground common to all 3. The next, we have here the outflow direct. No? So used water is carried through pipelines called tail races and re-enters the river downstream. So muna siya ang different types of water turbines. So we have the Francis, we have the Pelton, and we have the Kaplan. So it depends on the level of the head. So katong head ganina no, usually ang head is from the turbine up until the water surface sa reservoir. So it depends on the distance of the head and also the diameter. And sa Francis, it's radial and axial through the blades. Then ang Pelton is tangential to the runner, and the Kaplan is axial through the blades. And also it depends on the power generation, and also its speed varies. And also it's an energy type o different po ilahang efficiency. So pinaka-efficient is si Francis and si Kaplan with a percentage of 90%. So next is we have classifications of hydroelectric power plant. So the hydroelectric power plant is being classified by 4 different categories. We have the availability, so water flow. We have the water head, a major load, and also lastly is the installed capacity. So under the availability of water flow, we have runoff river without bondage. So the flowing water is directly fed to the turbines and the water is not being stored. So generating capacity only depends sa rate of flow of the water, and the plant is placed where there is connectivity directly to the river. So sa river siya gikan. So during rainy season, some water may go to waste due to high flow rate, while during dry season, generating capacity will be low due to low runoff periods or low flow rate. So dili siya nap siya pagka-intermittent gyud. Then next is the runoff river with pondage. So the pond or reservoir allows to store water during off-peak hours and uses during peak hours. So the usefulness of a runoff river plants is increased by pondage. So ang pondage, it utilizes the river's water for electricity generation, thus wastewater is minimal compared to a plant without pondage. So due to the presence of pondage, tail raised conditions should be such that exit water would not cause flooding. So next is kanisha is ang reservoir. So water is stored behind a dam which is available throughout the year. So it can be used as base load plant. So muna siya kanang sa atong usually sa Philippines pud no inani usually ang atua and can be used as a most hydroelectric power plant in the world, a reservoir or storage plant or storage type plant. So the larger the dam or storage facility, the larger its generating capacity. So muna siya ang Three Gorges Dam sa China which generates 22,500 megawatt. So another type of hydropower is the pump storage hydropower or PSH. So it works like a giant battery. So ang PSH facility is able to store the electricity generated by other power sources we have here. So diri sa ato ang sample picture we have solar. It could be solar, wind, or nuclear for later use. So kani siya nga facility, ka-store siya og energy. Paunsaon man siya mag-store og energy, ka-pump siya og water from lower elevation nga reservoir up until paingon sa higher reservoir. So inana siya mag-store. Then, kung ang demand sa electricity kay gamay, so kung gamay ang demand, ang water is from lower reservoir paingon sa higher nga reservoir. Then during periods sa high electrical demand, if kanang naana sa kanang peak demand, kailangan na gid kayo og kanang kuryente, ang water mo release siya back from the higher reservoir up until sa lower reservoir. Dayon mo turn na dayon ang turbine, then mo generate na dayon siya electricity. So dani no, assuming kanang naata sa lower nga demand no. So ang tubig gikan diri musaka siya gamit ang solar energy, then peak daw siya at night. So from higher reservoir na dayon mo naog na dayon siya paingon sa office. Then mo supply na dayon siya sa power lines. So one example for pump storage is the pump storage power plant at the Germany, which generates 120 megawatts. So klaro diri no, it uses solar energy para sa iyang storage. So next we have the waterhead. So the waterhead we have low, medium, and high. So ang low waterhead have had differences of less than 30 meters. So runoff river systems are generally used on this type of head where there is no surge tank as required, as the power plant is typically located near the dam. So low head systems transport water in large volume and thus required large diameter and short length of pipes, large turbines, and low-speed generators. Next is the medium water head. So it has head difference between 30 to 100 meters. So the water is mainly stored in the forebay, which goes through the turbine through the penstock. Then the forebay serves as a surge tank where the water is usually carried in an open channel from the main reservoir. Then we have the high water head. So kuan siya 100 meters and above yung head. High head systems transport water at smaller volume from a high elevation reservoir and thus require small diameter with long length of penstock, smaller turbines, and high-speed generators. So surge tank may needed on this type of head to serve as ready reservoir in case of sudden change in demand and reduce the severity of water hammering effect of the penstock. So generally, yung mga large hydroelectric power plants are either medium or high head. So we have two natures of load, the base and the peak. So kaning base is it provides continuous supply of electricity throughout the year with some minimum power generation requirement. So due to the low generation cost of hydroelectric power plants, they generally considered as must-run units. So hydroelectric power plants with continuous flow of water or has a large storage can be used as a base load na plants. So next is we have the peak. So peak load hydroelectric plants used to supply the grid during peak hours. So during peak hours lang siya mo supply or the top portion of the load curve. So muna siya ang peak load. So naalang na certain hours, no? Ay naalang na certain time na ang demand sa tong kuryente is peak. But the base load, muna siya ang demand na in the 24 hours, dagan yun itong mo atong kailangan nga kuryente within the 24 hours. Continuous gid siya, dili putol-putol. So runoff river plants with pondage and pump storage type can be considered as peak load plants. So katong pump storage kanina. So usually peak load plants has higher generation cost compared sa base load na plants. So next we have installed capacity. We have large, small, and mini. So for the large capacity, exceeding 100 megawatt in plant capacity and usually feeding into a large grid. The next we have small, typically ranges from 15 to 100 megawatt in plant capacity and usually feeding into a subgrid. So they usually called as embedded generators. And lastly, the mini has a plant capacity of 100 kilowatts or below 15 megawatt and can be usually feeding into a subgrid or isolated grid. So, provide niya siya og kuryente sa mga small community or remote areas away from the grid. So, they usually called as distributed energy resource. So, naay mga advantages o disadvantages po ng HEPP. So, first, the advantage, no, hydropower is inexpensive in the long run. Yung capital cost lang yung mahal. But in the long run, it is inexpensive. So, while there are upfront costs associated with hydropower, it is one of the most inexpensive forms of renewable energy over time. So once the necessary infrastructure is constructed, there is less maintenance required for upkeep than other forms of energy. And improvements are being made to improve how well hydropower performs. So next is hydropower is produced domestically. So unlike fossil fuels and most available solar panels, ang hydropower produced siya in the local. No? So this is important because of the associated growth in jobs. There is no need to rely on importing items from other countries. So next we have hydropower can be used for irrigation. So outside of generating energy, hydropower facilities also have important benefit of being able to provide a source for irrigation sa crops in surrounding areas. So especially sa areas where rain is scarce and droughts are common. So hydropower reservoir can be used as a clean and reliable source of fresh water. So next advantage is hydropower is clean and renewable. So unlike traditional na fossil fuel, so kung magamit og water to generate electricity, it doesn't release harmful pollutants sa air or sa water. So while there are some environmental considerations that come with building large hydropower facilities like the dams and reservoir, once operational na siya, hydropower plants themselves don't require burning any fossil fuel. Then next is hydropower pairs well with other renewables. So the majority of hydroelectric plants are storage or pump storage facilities. So Motosha will almost always have stored water to pull from to generate power. So hydropower's reliance on stored water in reservoir means it is generally reliable source of power in the sense that hydropower plants can be a stable source of supporting energy for more intermittent energy sources like wind and solar. So next is certain hydroelectric plant designs meet peak demand. So like the pump storage, no? So we have disadvantages. Nakauna, hydropower plants can adversely affect surrounding environment. So while hydropower is a renewable energy source, na ay mga critical environmental impact pod ang hydro. So that come along with building hydroelectric plants to be aware of. So most importantly, storage hydropower or pump storage hydropower systems interrupt the natural flow of river system. So this leads to disrupted animal migration paths, issues with water quality, and human or wildlife na displacement. So kani siya nga mga negative environmental impacts of hydropower typically lower with runoff river, wave energy, or tidal power setups, but the vast majority of current hydropower systems are katong storage or pump storage systems that block river flow. The number two, building hydropower facilities is expensive upfront. So many hydropower plants are large infrastructure projects that involve building dams, reservoir, power generating turbines. So requiring a it requires significant monetary investment. So mahal gid siya. So while a large hydropower facility can often provide low-cost electricity for 50 to 100 years after being built, the upfront construction costs can be significant. So this combined with the fact that suitable places for reservoirs are becoming rarer over time means that large-scale hydropower plant construction costs may continue to rise. Then last for the disadvantage, hydropower facilities rely on local hydrology. So hydropower is a reliable energy source, but it is ultimately controlled by weather and precipitation trends. So because most hydropower generation relies on river water, droughts that cause lower water flow impact hydroelectric generation capacity. So month to month and year to year, the amount of water available for hydropower systems can vary. Thus, electricity production at the hydroelectric facility can also vary. So here are some of the hydroelectric technologies. So daghan ni sila now, but I will just show you three.
Belgian company, shaking up the hydroelectric power scene. Their game-changing turbulent turbine, a marvel of modern design, is more affordable and economical than traditional powerhouses. Just picture it. You could have it humming along in a river or canal with minimal elevation changes in a week's time. Day or night, rain or shine, it's generating electricity for you. Here's how it works. This smart turbine creates a swirling vortex in a concrete basin, turning water flow into spinning energy. Depending on the water's flow rate, it can generate up to a whopping 70 kilowatts. Enough juice to power 6 or 7 households. And the best part, it's environmentally friendly. The design ensures our aquatic friends remain unharmed, and its impressive lifespan extends beyond 100 years. Truly, a step forward in renewable energy. Open Hydro. Continuing our journey into renewable energy, gentlemen, we set sail to Open Hydro, North America's largest tidal power plant off Canada's coast. Imagine a structure towering 5 stories high, weighing 1,000 tons. This isn't just another behemoth, it's a green giant, generating a staggering 16 megawatts of electricity, enough to power a small town. This marvel of engineering is the product of Irish company Open Hydro and Canada's Emera, and it's been harnessing the power of the sea since November 2016. Now, get this. Open Hydro features 2 turbines, each 53 meters in diameter, anchored by cables a solid 120 meters long. This means, from turbulence vortex to Open Hydro's tidal prowess, we can power about 1,000 homes without emitting a trace of greenhouse gas. Landustry. Now, we journey to the Netherlands to meet the next game changer, Landustrie. Landustrie Scruderbine, true to Dutch expertise in water management, turns canal height differences into electricity. It's a marvel, generating power from just a 1 meter height difference and a water flow of 500 liters per second. Just like its predecessors, the Landustrie Scruderbine is compact, easy to install, and kind to your wallet with its low maintenance costs. It's resilient, withstanding harsh canal conditions and ice while ensuring the safety of our aquatic friends. Impressively, it can churn out up to 100 kilowatts of electricity continuously and remains a reliable source of energy even during periods of low water flow. Best of all, it's a zero-emission solution.
So those are just some of the technologies invented by the researchers and engineers in the different parts of the world. So we have cumulative hydropower capacity worldwide. So in 2022, these are the major countries na they have contributed to the hydropower capacity. So we have the China as the highest. So the China generates 414.8 gigawatts of hydroelectricity, followed by Brazil, which is 109.8 gigawatts. So these are the list of hydroelectric power plants sa Philippines. We have here sa Luzon. So sa Luzon, no, there are daghan po sila large hydroelectric power plants, followed by small hydroelectric power plants and mini hydroelectric power plants. Then we also have here, Visayas has small, mini, and micro hydroelectric plants. And then in Mindanao, we have large, small, and mini hydroelectric plants. So Philippines energy mix by 2022. So Luzon has 6.6% sa gross generation sa hydroelectric, while Visayas has 0.24% share sa hydroelectric generation, and Mindanao has 31.07% hydroelectricity generation. So overall, the Philippines, so dako pagid kayo sa Mindanao, no, we have lots of hydro electricity na generation. So overall, in the Philippines, the energy percent share for hydroelectricity is 9.04%. So these are my references. And I think that ends my presentation. So if you have any questions, you can just ask me. So thank you and good evening.
Thank you, Engineer Bulisar. Does any of you has a question for our presenter? Okay, I just would like to emphasize, class, no, since it has already been presented regarding sa hydropower plant, there are two types of category sa iyang load, no? Hydropower can be used as base load and peak load. Since, for example, sa Mindanao, we have Agus and Pulangi, no, na hydro. They provide large amounts of power for our kanang load demand diri sa Mindanao. So, we are considering them as base load or a must-run unit, as what our presenter has said no earlier. It's a must-run unit since it's very cheap type of electricity. So we considered it as base load, and since it is base load because it provides kanang stable na supply, no? If it says that it will provide you 65 megawatts, it will provide you 65 megawatts, no? Unlike sa solar na nag-agad siya og kanang ato ang sa sun, which is it's erratic because it is naatay ka ng weather conditions, no? So we can't get the amount, the peak load na kaya i-provide ng solar. Unlike sa atong hydro. So it is considered base load. But since hydro is also kanang ang iyang generation unit is also able to follow peak load demands, no? Ingana siya kapaspas ang iyang ramping. So if you want an additional 10 megawatts at least 5 minutes, so the hydropower plant can provide you that, or kung ipaubsan, they can also lower down their generation. So it can be considered a peak load na power plant. So can be base load, it can be peak load. So, for those, sa katong ako ang sa undergrad na ako, no, you have your laboratory 1, which is load profiling. You have 3 types or 3 categories of loading sa inyong power plant. Please, you can resubmit your laboratory 1, no? Find power plants that are base load, intermediate, and peak load power plants. So you may resubmit your laboratory 1 class. Okay, so if wala na tayo questions sa atong presenter, thank you, Engineer Buliser, for that very well na presentation for our hydroelectric power plant. So we
Thank you,
can
ma'am.
proceed to our next presenter, Engineer Lienos. He will be presenting hydrogen na renewable energy. Okay, thank you, Engineer Bulisar. Engineer Lienos, whenever you're ready, you may start your presentation.
So good evening, ma'am. Good evening to everyone. I'm Paul Janos, and tonight I'll be presenting hydrogen. So the contents for tonight will be starting to the introduction, followed by the structure of hydrogen atom, types of hydrogen tanks, fuel cell, types of fuel cells, thermal versus hydrogen generation, and hydrogen production process and pros and cons. So for the discovery of hydrogen, so in 1766, Henry Cavendish was the first to recognize hydrogen gas as a discrete substance by identifying the gas from metal acid reaction as flammable air. Then in 1781, he was the first person to find that the gas produces water when burned, and this was a key experiment in disproving the Aristotelian theory of the four elements. So for you to better understand the history of hydrogen, you can uh, search or type that link below, so you can understand more about the history of the hydrogen. So for the basic properties, hydrogen, chemical element that exists as a gas at room temperature. So when hydrogen gas burns in air, it forms water, and hydrogen gas has the smallest atoms of any element, and hydrogen atom contains one proton and one only electron. So the proton is the center or nucleus of the hydrogen atom, and the electron travels around the nucleus, and pure hydrogen exists as a hydrogen gas, so in which pairs of hydrogen atoms bond together to make molecules, and hydrogen is the first element in the periodic table with the atomic mass and a atomic number of 1. So hydrogen, which has the chemical symbol of H, is the smallest and most common element in the universe. Uh, it is the energy that fuels the sun and the stars, and hydrogen is a versatile energy carrier. So you can power almost anything with hydrogen with numerous thermal, chemical, and electrical applications. So in contrast to some other forms of energy such as solar or wind, it's not all about harnessing what's already there. The challenge of the hydrogen is we need to make hydrogen energy. So hydrogen can be produced from a variety of resources. So one method is electrolysis, the process of passing an electrical current through water H2O to split into its separate hydrogen and oxygen atoms. After the hydrogen gas has been separated from oxygen gas, it is purified to remove traces of oxygen and water, and it is then compressed and safely stored. So the separated oxygen is typically released into the atmosphere or captured and stored for further uses. So types of hydrogen tanks, uh, the use of the hydrogen as a fuel source is becoming increasingly popular. So as we shift towards the renewable energy sources, the safe and efficient storage of hydrogen is a major challenge. So as it needs to be stored under high pressure, so we will explore the different types of tanks used to store hydrogen under pressure. So there are 5 types of gas tanks that can be used for both stationary and mobile applications to store hydrogen. So for the type 1, this is the most common gas tank, which is simple cylinder made of steel. The operating pressure is from 200 to 300 bar, and it is typically used for industrial applications. So the density of such a type 1 storage is around 15 grams per liter. And for the type 2, this type of tank is an improvement over type 1. So as it has additional fiberglass reinforcement on the outside, which increases its stability and allows gas storage at a higher pressure. So the operating pressure for these tanks is typically 100 to 500 bars, and it is mainly used in industrial applications. So the density of hydrogen in a type 2 tank is around 20 grams per liter. So for the type 3, this is where the interesting tanks for hydrogen begin. So the inner liner of these tanks is made of aluminum, and it is often found in vehicles. So type T tanks can store hydrogen at pressures up to 350 bar, and the typical density is 25 grams per liter. And next, for the type 4, so this tank is a further development of the type 3 tank. So with a plastic bladder inside to seal off the hydrogen. So this allows for greater expansion than the aluminum liner and enables the tank to contain a higher pressure of hydrogen, leading to a higher density, typically around 40 grams per liter at an operating pressure of up to 875 bar. So type 4 tanks are commonly used in the passenger car and heavy-duty commercial vehicle sectors. And for the last one, the type 5, this is the most exotic type of hydrogen storage tank and has no inside bladder and polyamide or aluminum. So the matrix that makes the gas seal is the only component which presents a significant challenge with hydrogen as it can migrate through even the dense matrices. So the density of hydrogen in a type 5 tank is around 20 grams per liter. And for the advantages and applications, the main differences between the five types of tanks are in the materials used to manufacture them. So for mobile applications of hydrogen, the ideal one is the Type 4 tank. So it is commonly used because it provides the highest storage density and making it ideal for passenger cars and heavy-duty commercial vehicles. So hydrogen tanks come in different types and have varying technological differences and advantages. So the type of tank chosen uh, depends on the application and the desired storage density. So as the world moves towards a more sustainable future, the efficient and safe storage of hydrogen will become increasingly important. So hydrogen produced by electrolysis using renewable energy like solar or wind, as well as sustainable water sources like desalination is referred to as renewable hydrogen or green hydrogen as it does not emit greenhouse gases when produced. So, and hydrogen is the lightest element. It is 14 times lighter than air. So because of its low density, it is difficult to transport as a gas. Instead, it needs to be liquefied or converted into a denser form such as ammonia for transportation. So because of its low density, it is difficult to transport as gas, like said. So it is liquefied or converted to ammonia, and after that, it can be transported. So hydrogen is one of the oldest and most commonly used gases in industry and manufacturing globally. So it can be used to fuel ships or heavy vehicles like trucks and buses, or as raw material for production of manufactured products like fertilizers and steel. So fuel cell is device that generates electricity through an electrochemical reaction, not combustion. So in a fuel cell, hydrogen and oxygen are combined to generate the electricity, heat, and water. So as we can see on this figure, the hy the hydrogen gas is supplied from a storage tank to the fuel cell, and the catalyst at the node, at the anode, the hydrogen molecules are split into protons and electrons with the help of catalyst. So the electrical circuit, the electrons released at the anode flow through an external circuit, creating an electrical current, and a proton exchange membrane allows protons to pass through while blocking electrons, ensuring that the electrical current flows through the external circuit rather than a short circuiting within the cell. So the oxygen from air or from the surrounding air is supplied to the cathode. And then the electron flow at the cathode, oxygen molecules reacts with the protons that have passed through the proton exchange membrane and electrons from the external circuit to form water. So in the exhaust, the only byproduct of this reaction is water, so which exits the fuel cell as clean exhaust. So types of fuel cell. So the first one is the alkali fuel cells or AFC, operate on compressed hydrogen and oxygen and employ an alkaline electrolyte, typically potassium hydroxide, used in space missions and stationary power applications. So the hydrogen gas is supplied to the anode and the water is produced at the cathode. So the electrons released at the anode flow through the external circuit providing the electrical power, and the electrical load consumes the generated power, and the hydroxyl ions are formed at the cathode, and hydrogen oxidation occurs at the anode. So hydrogen, the alkaline electrolyte, uh, for example, potassium hydroxide, facilitates ion conduction. And on the cathode, the oxygen reduction occurs in here, and oxygen from the air is supplied to the cathode. Then next is the molten carbonate fuel cells or MCFC. So use high temperature compounds of salt, carbonates like sodium or magnesium, and it operates at around 650 degrees Celsius, and it is suitable for large scale stationary power generation. So the hydrogen gas is supplied to the anode, and electrons released at the anode flow through the external circuit, providing electrical power. So the electrical load, same from the alkali fuel cell, it consumes the generated power, and the dioxide ions are present in electrolyte, and the hydrogen oxidation occurs at the anode, and high temperature salt carbonates like sodium or magnesium carbonates serve as the electrolyte. So oxygen reduction occurs at the cathode, and the oxygen from the air supply to the cathode, and the carbon dioxide is produced at the cathode. So next is the mm, phosphoric acid fuel cells. It utilizes the phosphoric acid as the electrolyte and operate at moderate temperatures around 150 to 200 degree Celsius, commonly used in distributed power generation and combined heat and power applications. So uh, it same at the first two fuel cells. Hydrogen is supplied to the anode, and the water is produced at the cathode, and the electrons released at the anode flow through the external circuit and providing electrical power. And again, the electrical load consumes the generated power, and hydrogen ions are formed at the anode and travel through the electrolyte, and hydrogen oxidation occurs again on the anode, and the phosphoric acid serves as the electrolyte in FC, a polymer electrolyte membrane is used. So the oxygen reduction occurs at the cathode, and the oxygen from the air is supplied to the cathode. And the last one is the proton exchange membrane fuel cells. So work with a polymer electrolyte sheet and operate at relatively low temperature around 80 to 100 degrees Celsius, and widely used in transportation applications such as fuel cell vehicles. So hydrogen gas is supplied to the anode, and again, water produced, and the electron flow uh, release at the anode flow to the external circuit, providing electrical power. And again, the load consumes the generated power, and the oxygen ions are formed at the cathode and travel through the electrolyte, and hydrogen oxidation occurs at the anode. So for the electrolyte, solid uh, electrolyte or zirconia facilitates ion conduction, and the oxygen uh, reduction occurs at the cathode, and the oxygen from the air is supplied to the cathode. So next is the comparison of the thermal generated energy versus hydrogen energy. So as we can see at the thermal generated energy, uh, the fuel source is diesel or petrol, hydrocarbon-based fuels, and the chemical energy, uh, the stored in the hydrocarbons molecules. Then next is the thermal energy or the combustion. The hydrocarbons are burned in an engine, producing heat, and the mechanical energy or the piston heat energy is expands gases moving the pistons. Then next is the electric energy, the generator. The mechanical energy drives a generator producing electricity, and the thermal generated energy has output not only electricity, but it has noise and carbon dioxide, nitrogen oxides, and fine dust. Then compared to the hydrogen energy, it has a pure hydrogen gas, then has chemical energy, so stored in the hydrogen molecules, then electric energy, the stack, so the hydrogen reacts electrochemically in a fuel cell stack, producing electricity, and has an output of electricity and also heat and water. So for the comparison of these two, thermal energy relies on hydrocarbon-based fuels like diesel or petrol, and hydrogen energy uses a pure hydrogen gas as the fuel source. And for the generation process, the thermal energy is produced through the combustion of hydrocarbons in an engine generating heat that is then converted into mechanical energy and eventually electrical energy. Then for the hydrogen energy is generated through electrochemical reactions in a fuel cell stack where hydrogen reacts with oxygen to produce electricity directly. So for the chemical energy storage, the thermal energy stores chemical energy in hydrocarbon molecules, and for the hydrogen uh, energy stores chemical energy and hydrogen molecules. Then for the mechanical energy, uh, the thermal energy utilizes heat to expand gases and move pistons, converting thermal energy into mechanical energy. For the hydrogen, energy does not involve direct mechanical energy conversion, but directly produces electricity through electrochemical reactions. Then for the emissions, the thermal energy generation emits pollutants such as carbon dioxide, nitrogen oxide, and fine dust, contributing to air pollution and climate change. For the hydrogen energy, produces minimal emissions with the main byproduct being water, making it much cleaner and environmentally friendly. For the hydrogen production pathways, as for the energy input for the ethanol, a renewable alcohol-based fuel, and biomass, organic matter used as renewable energy source, then organic waste, biodegradable materials such as food scrap, yard yard waste, and sewage sludge. And next is the crude oil, a fossil fuel extracted from underground reservoir, and natural gas, a fossil fuel primarily composed of methane. Then the last one is coal, a fossil fuel formed from plant matter over a million of years. So for the processing, uh, reformer, regardless of the energy input, the reformer process involves feeding the input fuel into a reformer reactor along with the steam at high temperature in the presence of catalyst. So the reforming reactions decomposes the input fuel into hydrogen gas or carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide through steam reforming or partial oxidation. Then the fuel output. So for all the uh, energy input, the hydrogen, uh, the primary fuel output of the reformer process is hydrogen gas. So following the reforming reaction, the produced hydrogen is separated from other gases using purification techniques such as water gas, shift reaction, and gas separation methods. Then for the next energy input, the hydro, uh, the energy harness from flowing water, typically from hydroelectric power plants, and geothermal energy derived from heat stored beneath the Earth's surface, and solar concentrator, the gen the, uh, so these three, uh, the electricity generated from the renewable energy sources is directed to an electrolyzer. So an electrolyzer is a device that uses electricity to split water into hydrogen. So we will discuss it more later. Then still the fuel output is the hydrogen. And the next one is the solar PV and wind turbine and wave generator. So it is electricity generated from ocean waves by wave energy converters. So it directs to the electricity generated from the renewable energy sources is directed to an electrolyzer, and then the output is hydrogen. Then for the last two, the nuclear uh, energy generated from the controlled nuclear fission reactions in a nuclear power plant this energy is released as heat during the fission process. So uh, it uh, the electricity generated by the nuclear power plant is directed to an electrolyzer. So for the so this is some example of the hydrogen power plant. So as you can see, na ating mga solar PV, windmill, and the role of the solar PV, it utilizes photovoltaic panels to directly convert sunlight into electricity for electrolysis or reforming process, same as for the windmill, uh, harness wind energy to generate electricity for hydrogen production through electrolysis or reforming. So serves as a source of water molecules for electrolysis or reforming process. During the electrolysis uses electricity to split water molecules into hydrogen and oxygen gases. In the reforming, converts natural gas or other hydrocarbons into hydrogen gas through a chemical process, and then transportation, it distributes hydrogen gas to end users such as industrial facilities or fueling stations for various applications, including transportation. So, hydrogen production process, the chemical process or some thermal process use the energy in various resources such as natural gas, coal, or biomass to release hydrogen from their molecular structure in other process, heat in combination with closed chemical cycles produces hydrogen from feedstocks such as water. So natural gas reforming, it is a steam methane reforming is a widely used method for hydrogen production from natural gas. So it involves a reacting methane with steam at high temperature to produce hydrogen and carbon monoxide. And next is the biomass gasification. Involves heating biomass feedstocks such as wood, agricultural residues, or organic waste at high temperatures in a controlled environment to produce a synthesis gas containing hydrogen, carbon monoxide, and other gases. The next one is the biomass derived liquid reforming. So process to convert liquid hydrocarbons feedstock derived from biomass such as bio-oil or bioethanol into hydrogen-rich syngas through reforming reactions. Then lastly is the solar thermochemical hydrogen production uses concentrated solar energy to drive high temperature chemical reactions that split water or other feedstocks to produce hydrogen. So next one is the electrolytic process. So for electrolyzers, use electricity to split water into hydrogen and oxygen through electrolysis. And this technology is commercially available and can utilize renewable electricity sources for sustainable hydrogen production. So its feedstocks is water. Next is direct solar water splitting process or photolytic process use light energy to split water into hydrogen and oxygen. So these processes are currently in various early stages of research but offer long-term potential for sustainable hydrogen production with low environmental impact. And photoelectrochemical or PEC processes utilize semiconductor materials to absorb sunlight and drive the electrochemical splitting of water into hydrogen and oxygen. Then lastly is the biological process. So microbes such as bacteria and microalgae can produce hydrogen through biological reactions using sunlight or organic matter. So this technology pathways in the research and development stage with pilot demonstration occurring, but in the long term have the potential for sustainable low carbon hydrogen production. So thermochemical process, natural gas reforming, uh, the pressure swing absorption or PSA process is based on the phenomenon that under high pressure gases tend to be dropped onto solid surfaces. For example, to be absorbed. So steam methane reforming or SMR, the reaction of uh, methane reacts uh, with steam at high temperature to produce carbon monoxide and hydrogen gas. So this reaction is the primary method for industrial hydrogen production from natural gas. Then water gas shift reaction in the forward reaction, carbon monoxide reacts with steam to produce uh, carbon dioxide, and additionally uh, hydrogen gas. So the partial oxidation of methane reaction, uh, methane reacts with oxygen at high temperature, typically in the presence of a catalyst to produce carbon monoxide and hydrogen gas. So this reaction is an alternative method for hydrogen production from natural gas and can be more energy efficient than SMR in certain applications. Then for the reverse reaction can also occur under certain conditions, converting uh, carbon monoxide uh, to hydrogen. The next is the uh, thermochemical process. Biomass gasification is a well-established method that converts biomass into hydrogen and other products through a controlled process involving heat, steam, and oxygen without combustion. So a simplified example reaction for biomass gasification involves glucose as a surrogate for cellulose, a major component of biomass. So this reaction demonstrates the conversion of glucose, representing biomass, with oxygen and steam to produce carbon monoxide. So carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, and hydrogen gas, and other byproducts. So the water gas shift reaction plays a role in biomass gasification. In this reaction, carbon monoxide reacts with the steam to produce carbon dioxide and additionally hydrogen gas. So accompanied by a small amount of heat release. So this reaction exemplify the fundamental process involved in biomass gasification, enabling the sustainable production of hydrogen and other valuable products from renewable biomass resources. Next is the thermochemical process of biomass-derived liquid reforming. So liquids derived from biomass such as ethanol and bio-oils can undergo a reforming process similar to natural gas reforming to produce hydrogen. So in the case of ethanol, the steam reforming reaction is as follows. Ethanol reacting with uh, with the steam at high temperature to produce carbon monoxide and hydrogen gas. Then carbon monoxide reacts with steam to form carbon dioxide and additionally hydrogen gas with a small amount of heat release. So these reactions demonstrate how liquids derived from biomass can be reformed to produce hydrogen, so offering a renewable and sustainable pathway for hydrogen production. Then the thermochemical process, solar thermochemical hydrogen. So uh, it is also water splitting is a technology pathway that utilize high temperatures sourced from concentrated solar power or the waste heat of nuclear power reactions, along with chemical reactions to produce hydrogen and oxygen from water. So this approach offers a long-term solution for hydrogen production with the potential for low or no greenhouse gas emission. Then next is the electrolysis. So i-play na lang siguro na ulit ang video, but electrolysis is a process that utilize electricity to split water molecules into hydrogen and oxygen gas. So, iyang process, ang iyang setup is nasa place in an electrolyzer. So, ga-consist siya sa an electrolyte solution. So, two electrodes, which is the anode and cathode, and an external power source such as a battery or solar panels, then an electrolyte solution often composed of water with added salts or acids to enhance conductivity is used to facilitate the flow of electricity within the electrolyzer. Then the electrodes are immersed in the electrolyte solutions. So the anode is connected to the positive terminal of the power source, while the cathode is connected to the negative terminal. And when an electric current is applied across the electrodes, it causes the water molecules to undergo electrolysis, and at the cathode or the negative electrode, water molecules or H2O are reduced by gaining electrons to form hydrogen gas. Then at the anode, or the positive electrode, water molecules lose electrons and are oxidized to form oxygen gas. So the hydrogen gas and oxygen gas produced during electrolysis rise to the surface of the electrolyte and are collected separately. So the collected hydrogen gas and oxygen gas can be stored or utilized for various applications such as fuel cells, industrial process, or transportation. So the electrolysis is a versatile and widely used method for producing hydrogen, so offering flexibility in utilizing renewable energy sources for sustainable hydrogen production.
Structures, we know that electrons in a metal aren't bound to particular atoms. They form a sea of electrons that can move easily if a potential difference or a voltage is applied across it. This could be from an electrical cell or a battery. The electrons will begin to drift towards the positive terminal of the battery, and this is what happens when current flows. Current is the movement of charge, in this case, electrons. Now, let's go back to our molten sodium chloride. We've added our copper wires, let's call them electrodes, and now we'll connect these to an electrical cell. The electrons will start to flow in the wires, and this will cause one electrode to become positively charged and the other negatively charged. This has an immediate knock-on effect in the molten sodium chloride, which you'll remember is a mixture of sodium cations and chloride anions. Anything positively charged in the liquid, in this case the sodium ions, is going to be attracted to the negative electrode. And anything negatively charged, in this case the chloride ions, is going to be attracted to the positive electrode. This is because opposite electrical charges attract. When the ions meet the electrodes, electron exchange happens. This triggers a chemical reaction. Solids can form, gases can be given off, and new solutions can be left behind. It all depends on the liquid and what material the electrodes are made from. There is more detail about this process in our lesson, Interpreting Electrode Equations. There are special names for the electrodes, which are usually metal plates with a larger surface area than a piece of wire. The positive electrode is called the anode. It attracts anions. And the negative electrode is called the cathode. It attracts cations. The liquid is effectively conducting electrical current. The only difference is that the charge carriers in the liquid, in other words, the charged particles that are moving, are ions. If a liquid has free-moving ions and can conduct like this, it is called an electrolyte. Remember that electrolysis can also take place in ionic solutions as well as molten compounds. The more concentrated that solution, the greater the ion flow rate. Ion flow rate can also be increased by increasing the potential difference or voltage across the cell. We'll be studying several examples of electrolysis in more detail in other lessons. For the time being, though, here is a summary of the key ideas about electrolysis. Electrolysis is the flow of electrical current in a conducting solution or molten liquid that causes chemical changes. The conducting liquid is called an electrolyte and has free moving ions. The conducting plates, bars, or wires inserted into an electrolyte are called electrodes. Positive ions are called cations and are attracted to the cathode. Negative ions are called anions and are attracted to the anode. When current flows in an electrolyte, it is the ions that move and carry the electrical charge. When current flows in the electrodes of wires, it is the electrons that move.
So that was about the electrolysis. Then next is the direct solar water splitting process, or the photoelectrochemical water splitting. So the semiconductor photoelectrode water splitting employs a photoelectrode typically made of a semiconductor material such as silicon, titanium dioxide, or gallium arsenide. So this photoelectrode absorbs photons from sunlight and generating electron hole pairs within the material. So when photons of sunlight strikes the semiconductor material, they excite electrons from the valence band to the conduction band, creating electron hole pairs. So this process is facilitated by the semiconductor's band gap energy, which determines the wavelength of light that can be absorbed. So the excited electrons and holes generated within the semiconductor are separated due to the internal electric field of the material. So at the cathode, water molecules are reduced by gaining electrons to form hydrogen gas. So water molecules lose electrons and are oxidized to form oxygen gas. Then an electrolyte solutions, typically uh, water with added ions to enhance conductivity, facilitates the transfers of ions between the semiconductor. Then the hydrogen gas and oxygen gas produced during PEC water splitting are collected separately through gas evolution reaction at the respective electrodes. And uh, the water splitting offers a promising pathway for sustainable hydrogen production directly from sunlight, with potential for high efficiency and low environmental impact. So in the global share of uh, energy sources, and as you can see, the hydrogen is only 2%, and in the right side of the you can see that uh, the hydrogen consumption worldwide in uh, 2020 by country. So uh, around 120 million metric tons of hydrogen are consumed worldwide. So China is the world's largest producer and consumer of hydrogen. So in 2020, China's usage of hydrogen amounted to some 23.9 million metric tons, ranking second is the United States, accounting for 11.3 million metric tons of global hydrogen consumption. So this figure represents a difference of roughly 53% when compared to the leading country. So in the Philippine government, uh, prompted by a circular from the Department of Energy, DOE, is actively exploring hydrogen for power generation. So it is DOE circular number 2024-01-001, signed by Energy Secretary Rafael Lutilla, offers incentives for hydrogen energy projects aimed at producing green hydrogen for power generation. The circular provides income tax holidays and exemption from duties on renewable energy machinery. So local hydrogen occurring naturally in geologic formations is being considered for power generation alongside natural gas to reduce emissions. The National Power Corp is leading feasibility studies on using green hydrogen and fuel cell technologies in rural areas. So this collaboration aims to promote clean and affordable energy, potentially replacing diesel powered system. Then for the new technologies, the 2024 Toyota Mirai is the most affordable electric car to tap for 100 miles per charge, and it's one of the only a few that's fueled by hydrogen. So despite the naysayers, Toyota continues to improve and promote fuel cell technology in this sedan second generation. It's the rarest Toyota and a particularly stylish one with a unique design and upscale cabin treatments seen nowhere else in the brand's lineup. Sadly, it sold only in Southern California, the only place in the country with hydrogen refueling stations. So the Mirai isn't just a science project, it's a luxurious and decent handling car that acts like a normal EV, except it refuels from dead to 100% in 5 minutes. So there's no other car on sale quite like it, but it's not entirely without competition. The Hyundai Nexo SUV is powered by similar hydrogen fuel cell, and like the Mirai, it is exclusive to California. So the Toyota Mirai is a hydrogen fuel cell electric vehicle by Toyota Motor Corporation. So it is mainly uses hydrogen as fuel to power an electric motor to a fuel cell stack, generating electricity from hydrogen and oxygen. So it offers zero emission driving, emitting only water vapor. Benefits include long range, quick refueling, and potential for renewable hydrogen production. The challenges include limited refueling infrastructure and high costs. Despite this, Toyota invests in hydrogen fuel cell technology for sustainable transportation. For the pros and cons of hydrogen fuel cells, so advantages of hydrogen is it is one most common element in nature. It is an energy carrier. If the energy used to produce it is from renewable energy sources, so is the hydrogen. And it is twice as efficient as traditional internal combustion engines, and there are no emissions, resulting in a carbon footprint reduction for both commercial and residential use, and it can be locally produced, and long-term storage is possible, and the hydrogen doesn't self-discharge like lithium-ion batteries do. So for the disadvantages and of hydrogen, it is expensive, and the production is energy intensive, the catalyst materials are rare and expensive, and the hydrogen storage is prone to leaks, and there is a lack of infrastructure for long-range transport, and it is highly flammable. So, hydrogen holds immense potential as a renewable energy source to support the transition to a low-carbon economy with continued technological advancement and supportive policies. Hydrogen could play a crucial role in decarbonizing energy system and addressing global climate change challenges. However, realizing the full potential of hydrogen will require concerted efforts from governments, industry, stakeholders, and research institutions to overcome technical, economic, and regulatory barriers. And that would be all. And these are my references for tonight's presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Engineer Lenas, for your presentation. Does anyone have a question for our presenter? If there's none, I guess we can end our class for tonight. But before we end, let's have attendance now. Can everyone open their cameras, please? Uh, okay, let me have a picture. 1, 2, 3, smile. Okay, thank you everyone for joining us tonight. We can end our class here. Ang gabi sa tanan.
Thank you, ma'am. Good
Thank you,
evening.
ma'am. Gabi.